seconds and counting.
Hey, what's good, yo? Welcome back to another video. I'm Anish, I'm joined with Drew and Jacob, and today we have some very exciting news for y'all. And the moment I read this news, I felt like a kid waking up on Christmas Day. And basically what happened is that the odds for Levis being drafted first overall by the Carolina Panthers jumped from plus 5,000 to plus 400. And so essentially what that means is that it jumped from a 2% chance to being drafted at first pick overall to 20%. I think Bryce Young is still the favorite, but this is a huge jump in probability for Levis, like just overnight. And some people say that this is because of a post on Reddit on r/sportsbook. And some random user guy, like he just said that Levis told his friends and family that Carolina would take him first pick overall. And he's like, "Oh, you're welcome." And so everyone's like, "Oh, I'm like, this probably is not going to happen, but I'm just going to bet on it anyway on the off chance that it does happen." And so yeah, that probably what's changed the odds so much, and which is really crazy. And so obviously that post sparked a huge frenzy. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the sports book ended up taking the bet for first pick overall down. So I just wanted to ask you, like, how do you guys rate the top four quarterbacks in this draft class?
Originally, I wasn't necessarily so high on Levis. Like many people, I guess you could say the casual fans that just look at stats. I would start the rankings with Bryce Young at 1, CJ Stroud at 2, Anthony Richardson at 3, and then Will Levis at 4. I feel like that's probably the general consensus that you'll find. I don't think the gaps are as far away as people make out, like the 2 to 4 range to be. Like, I'd say the gap between Bryce Young and the rest of them are decently sized. But I mean, since we're talking about Will Levis, I'll just say I feel like he is kind of that prototypical quarterback you would look for and want to develop. And unfortunately, he is 24. Probably want your guy to be like 21, 22, and that's okay. He's got all the physical intangibles. He's got all the mental intangibles to be a franchise quarterback. He's got a super strong arm. He's a great athlete, which shows that he has upside to make plays off script. He's a super tough, gritty guy, really high character, smart, intelligent. I scored a 93 on the S2 test. And he went to the Manning camp. The Mannings love him. It's going to play a big factor, especially when it comes to the Colts and Jim Irsay, too. Man, I can see why NFL scouts are high on Will Levis. Obviously, Anthony Richardson, I think it's pretty obvious that he is the most talented quarterback in the NFL. He's the best athlete we've seen at the quarterback position in pretty much ever. And then you got CJ Stroud, who's just a great distributor of the football, ball placement that I haven't really seen in a long time. And Bryce Young, he's special. Simply put it, he's special. He can make something out of nothing. Make sure he doesn't have the best arm, but he's just the best quarterback. He's the best player on the field every time he steps onto the field.
Yeah, awesome, man. I mean, I think like you said, I feel like most fans and I guess armchair GMs, if you will, have Levis as their quarterback 4 and at best quarterback 3. And I feel like he's been getting like a lot of slander on Twitter, Reddit, like anywhere you look. And I feel like maybe he is getting a little underrated at this point just because like there's so much aversion to him. And we've even seen rumors that the Texans maybe have Levis as one of their top 2 QBs in the draft. As you see, like Levis has pretty good odds for being drafted by the Texans. So I think it's interesting to see how us fans, we don't have the same information as teams. So it's interesting to see how teams could potentially have Levis as their quarterback 1 or quarterback 2. And I just want to ask you guys, so I've seen Levis getting pro comps to not only Josh Allen on the high end, but also to Carson Wentz. And I think about Frank Reich being in Carolina, given his history with Wentz, first being his offensive coordinator in Philly, and then pushing to trade for him in Indianapolis. Do you think that odds jump could be because of Frank Reich once again asserting he wants his prototype QB and no other person than Will Levis who kind of fits that mold?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you mentioned the odds again. I feel like it's kind of crazy timing. I know that Frank Reich had a press conference today where he mentioned that he had a talk with GM Scott Fittner about how they pretty much came to a consensus about a quarterback the other day. Obviously, last night and this morning is when you saw the Will Levis odds go up. So maybe someone knows something. Maybe the Reddit guy is right. But again, the odds could simply just be rising because, you know, Levis is a prototype that Reich would like. And Reich has not had a quarterback that's below 6'3", and that would, tell you that maybe they wouldn't go with Bryce Young, even though if that's what everyone assumes they're going to do. That's what everyone believes that they're going to do. Well, maybe Reich does want a guy with a really strong arm, guy that can move outside the pocket as well. Really tough guy. That's Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz had a really high character as well. Same with Will Levis. And I could kind of see all of that going together. Carson Wentz didn't have the most talent around him at North Dakota State. Will Levis didn't have the most talent around him at Kentucky. But something that they did have was the mental and physical intangibles to be a franchise quarterback. And if Frank Reich believes he can develop that, then he will absolutely have no problem with taking Will Levis.
Well, yeah, I mean, there are some connections between the Panthers staff and Will Levis that I think are interesting. Thomas Brown, their offensive coordinator last season, worked with Levis's offensive coordinator from Kentucky that was there like 2021, and then he went to the Rams in 2022, who obviously worked with Brown, who's now the Panthers offensive coordinator. So there's some connections there. And like you said, Levis fits what Reich wants to do at the quarterback spot. I I still think it will be Bryce Young, but there is definitely some smoke here that's kind of interesting. I'm interested to see where it goes. Maybe tomorrow we'll get a little bit more on it. It feels like, especially if it's just off the Reddit situation, it feels like that's made up. At least to me, it doesn't feel like that's true. But it is interesting to have the discussion about, and especially because of the timing with the meeting with the Panthers, the GM and the head coach yesterday, and then that coming out that night. It is pretty interesting. Yeah, I think it's so odd because I think we all thought, like, from the beginning, how the Panthers reacted with Stroud seemed like, oh, we're going to see you in Carolina and whatnot. And I guess, like, liking Levis in some ways. And then we just assume that they're going to take Bryce Young because we all think that he's our quarterback one. But it's just very interesting to think. And I think it's what, like, Texans fans are just hoping, like, trying to will it into existence. And hopefully this is the light at the end of this very, very dark tunnel, is that we just end up with Bryce Young magically at pick number 2. He falls into our laps. And I wonder if if Will Levis and Bryce Young are D'Amico's top 2 quarterbacks that he's mentioned in that clip. I think that's been circulating around that, oh, we like 2 guys, 2 quarterbacks at the top of this draft. I feel like if it is Will Levis, they might try to trade up for him later. But if we go with this, like, assumption that maybe teams are higher on Levis than we think he is, they might just end up drafting him at pick number 2. But whatever might happen, I think it's either Bryce Young or Will Levis at 2. Just taking whoever the Panthers don't take, which I think is very interesting to me. So I just wanted to get your take on that.
Yeah, I mean, things are ever changing when it comes to scouting and organizations making decisions. D'Amico Ryans can say one thing. 2 months ago, I know the Texans told head coaching candidates that they were going to draft a quarterback at 2. But when you watch a player meet with the player, because they didn't meet with the players when all this happened, they still had to go to the combine. They still had their top 30 visits. They met with Levis at the combine. They brought Levis in for a top 30 visits. It's very, very likely that the Texans have grown more and more into liking Will Levis. Same with other NFL teams. That's something that happens every single year. You saw it last year with Trayvon Walker and the Jaguars. Like, prospects always come out of nowhere and end up being top 10 picks, the first pick in the draft. Stuff like that happens all the time. So I could see the possibility of him going at 2 to the Texans, but I just don't see it. I don't think it makes really any logical sense to do that. And I feel like, especially from a fan point of view, also from the GM and D'Amico Ryans, I feel like they'll probably just say, let's go defense at 2 if we're really gonna stay, and then if we want our quarterback, we'll get it later, get it from 12, trade up from 12, something like that. Because I think they really do like those defensive players in Will Anderson and Tyree Wilson as well, and I think they like them more than they would like Will Levis.
The only thing that I really have to say about the him maybe going one is just the NFL draft is the most unpredictable thing in sports. You never know with anything. It feels like usually we have the number one pick by like this time, but didn't really feel like we know for certain. Like it feels like Bryce Young, but you just never really know. You can't. Anything can happen when we get to Thursday. It's always wild. Everything happens so fast. It feels like.
Ian Rappaport said that this is the most uncertain the draft has been in years, and I think it's kind of like true in some ways. Like the Texans, a team notorious for not leaking a lot of things, it somehow comes out with all these leaks, and each leak says a different thing. So it's crazy to think like how the Texans have like somehow like either they're just playing chess and everyone's playing checkers, or they're just have no idea what's happening. I want to believe the former, that they're actually being a smart organization. And I think overall, just about the odds again. I mean, we saw last year with Stingley's odds just increasing like a lot just the week of the draft. So who knows if this could actually mean something? Maybe Levis's odds takes another jump tomorrow. Who knows? And so I think this draft is going to be really interesting, especially on draft day. Just waiting to see who the Panthers take, and it'll be really crazy. And just one last thing I want to ask you guys is, like, I just find it hard to believe. Like, do you guys think that the Panthers straight up to one without their QB1 in mind? And like, do you guys buy that they just wanted to control the draft, but they just traded up for just to have to say that they had the first pick and not really have a guy in mind? Because I feel like maybe if Will Levis was their guy after all, maybe he could have fallen to pick 9, or maybe they know that teams like Will Levis a lot, that he wouldn't even be available at pick 9. So maybe that's why, and maybe they're just trying to manipulate the Texans into trading up. Like, what do you guys think of just that? Like the Panthers doing what they did in order to get the first pick.
Honestly, they were just trying to control the draft. I don't think they had like their top guy 100% decided. I think they were leaning towards Stroud at the time, and maybe it kind of come off that since then. But I think they really were just trying to get on top and just kind of see what they had. The top 4 guys. They didn't go with all of them. They went to all the pro days. I think they were just trying to figure out which guy they wanted, and they wanted to be able to get the guy that they thought was the best quarterback at the end of the day.
So I was just wondering, I'm like, why would they do that? And I mean, I just hope that what Lovie Smith did to us just doesn't hurt us in the long run. Because if
Yeah.
Bryce Young is the guy for us, we possibly could have avoided that just with maybe the roster being different. It's just something to consider, and hopefully it doesn't bite us in the back after all. But that's pretty much it for the video. Thank you guys for watching, and let us know what you guys think of this whole situation in the comment section below. As always, be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications. Thank y'all for watching. Peace.